All right, boys and girls, like we did in class the other day, we're going to talk about geography. Most of these slides you've seen already. We did go over them in class. There are a few extra ones here that hopefully will help you remember what we talked about. Remember, we're learning geography because that's going to help us understand the history of the United States more. So, let's learn a little bit about geography. First, let's look at the word. We've talked about different Greek and Latin words, and we've found even in language arts that they're everywhere. We started with geo, and do you remember what geo means? It's earth, like geometry and geothermal and George. Okay, and then we had graphy. So what is graphy, or what is graph? Describing or writing. And we have lots of words that have graphy and graph. There are actually hundreds of them. We have graphics in video games and telegraph, which you've probably never seen before, and calligraphy, and so many more. So geography is describing the earth, describing the land. Remember, we talked about climate. It refers to the kind of weather that can be found in an area over a period of time. So we could never say, what is the climate like today in Ocean City? But we could say, what is the climate in Ocean City in summer? Okay, because we're talking about a period of time. We could say, what is the weather today in Ocean City? Okay, so weather is basically what we have for one day. Climate is what we can expect for a period of time. We have one of these in our classroom. This is a globe, and a globe is a model of the Earth. And remember, when we look at a globe, we can learn a lot about our country. We can see what oceans and other bodies of water are near us, what countries are near us. If we have a really good globe, we might be able to feel little bumps on it that'll tell us about the mountains. Okay, so we're doing this so we can get a better idea of what the United States looks like and what's around it and how big it is to the rest of the places on Earth. A compass is a tool used for finding directions. Probably in science class, you'll learn why that N is red. We did mention briefly in class that it's connected to something called magnetic north. Okay, so we use a compass to find directions, and somebody brought one in for us recently, which is very nice. And you may remember that this is called a compass rose. It's also called a wind rose, and it's used to show direction on a map. If a map or a globe doesn't have a compass rose, it may not be very good. Somebody mentioned in class that they've seen this on the roof of someone's house. Sometimes there's a rooster there. That's used to show us the direction that the wind is blowing. Do you remember what we called it in class? A weather vane. And you can kind of see why this is called a rose. There's a drawing of a rose on the right side, and I can see why they call it this. The cardinal directions are the 4 main points. Somebody said that the easy way to remember NESW was never eat soggy watermelons. I never would have thought of that, but if it works, that's great. We know that N is north, S is south, E is east, and of course W is watermelon. West. Then we have intermediate directions. We talked about intermediate, what inter means and what media means. These are the four main points between the cardinal directions. Remember, cardinal directions are N-E-S-W, north, east, south, and west. The intermediate ones are northeast, southeast, southwest, northwest. Okay? These are the intermediate directions. This is not a good map of the United States. This makes it a good map of the United States. We have our windrows, and now on this one, the intermediate directions are labeled. So now we can say that Florida is in the southeastern part of the United States. It's east and it's south, and we always put the word south before east and west, just like we put the word north between east and west. Okay, Maine, all the way up there in the upper right, is in the northeastern part of the United States. If we just look at a globe, it's pretty hard to say where something is located, especially if it's out in the middle of the ocean. So we've used this system of latitude and longitude, these horizontal and vertical lines that make it very easy for us to find a point. Latitude refers to invisible horizontal lines which run east and west. Okay, so it makes it very easy for us, almost like the game Battleship if you've ever played it, to find something. Okay, the easy way to remember latitude is think of a ladder. The rungs of a ladder are flat and they go from left and right. You'll just have to learn this word. There are other words. If you think of football, when somebody throws a lateral, they toss the ball to the side. Okay, so lateral are the east and west lines. And the most important one is the one at the center called the equator. The equator is an imaginary line. So again, we can't see these from space. We don't see these on the ground. We just print them on maps and globes. The equator is an imaginary line that divides the Earth into northern and southern halves called hemispheres. Hemi means half, like semi, and a sphere, of course, is a ball. It's like a three-dimensional circle. Longitude refers to invisible vertical lines which run north and south from pole to pole. If we only had the latitude, well, we would only have half of the information that we needed. With longitude, we can figure out exact points, one going from east and west, one going from north to south. The longitudinal lines go through the North Pole and the South Pole. Okay? And each of these lines has a number. And this is what pilots and ship captains use to find specific points on the Earth. So just like we had the equator to divide the Earth into northern and southern hemispheres, or halves, on the among the latitudinal lines, for the vertical ones, for the longitude, we also have a main line. It's called the Prime Meridian. The Prime Meridian is an imaginary line that divides the Earth into eastern and western halves called hemispheres. Now, for us in the United States, we're in the Western Hemisphere. And if you can see this picture here, we're on the left side of that line. We're on the west side of the Prime Meridian. Okay, that's the end of this first social studies slideshow with Mr. P. I hope you've enjoyed it. Watch it regularly so that you can learn a lot of these words, and you'll be sure to get a lot more. See you later.